Welcome to The Healthline, Issues That Shape Our Wellbeing. I'm your host, Dr. Andrea Ault-Brutus. In The Healthline, we provide engaging and informative content on the factors that shape our health and well-being, along with innovative insights that help us gain a better understanding of our ever-evolving complex healthcare system. Today, I'm very excited to have Jamie Rosen, Esquire, on The Healthline. Jamie Rosen is a family mental health lawyer and a graduate of the Maurice A. Dean School of Law at Hofstra University. She is a partner and chair of the Mental Health Law Group at Meister, Seelig & Fine PLLC, dedicated to representing individuals and families in crisis situations specific to mental health issues and/or alcohol substance use disorders. Jamie's knowledge extends to inpatient hospitalization matters, discharge planning, confidentiality and HIPAA, applications for assisted outpatient treatment, which is Kendra's law, adult guardianship proceedings, mental hygiene warrant proceedings, family court order of protection matters, housing rights, criminal defense, estate planning, and so much more. Recognizing that these complicated mental health issues require a team approach, Jamie collaborates with medical and mental health professionals to develop the best clinical plan and legal course of action. Jamie, welcome to The Healthline. We're very excited to have you on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
As I mentioned before, you are a proud graduate of the Hofstra Law School. We love having Hofstra alum on our podcast.
It's nice to be back on campus.
So mental health is very important, and May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And many people may not know what a mental health lawyer does. So can you tell our listeners more about what mental health lawyers do?
Really, what I see my role is advising families through an extremely difficult emotional time, generally during a crisis. My clients are generally family members, sometimes close friends, but of someone who's suffering from a serious mental illness or substance use or alcohol use disorder. They are advocates, caregivers, and so much more. This often consumes their lives, so in addition to their full-time jobs and other family obligations, they're full-time advocates for a very vulnerable loved one. My representation, I really help these clients advocate more efficiently through the really closely intertwined legal and clinical systems. Some of the areas that you mentioned, a large part of my practice is helping clients navigate through an inpatient psychiatric hospitalization, dealing with confidentiality issues and discharge planning. I help clients apply for outpatient treatment through Kendra's law. I help families and represent families in guardianship matters for adults and family court orders of protection matters, and really so much more. And I really do collaborate with other professionals, mental health professionals, medical professionals, really any trusted advisor working with the family to come up with the best course of action.
It's great that we are having this discussion during Mental Health Awareness Month. So what is the state of mental health in New York and across the country at this time?
The state of mental health in New York and really across the country, the reality is that our collective mental health is struggling. As a society, you can't really open a newspaper or search online without seeing articles about burnout, anxiety, depression, suicide rates, cuts to funding for major healthcare programs. But it's not all grim. The fact that we're talking about mental health and acknowledging how important it is to take care of yourself is really a step forward. We are seeing an increase in awareness and acceptance. Many important people are coming forward and raising that awareness in the media. One of the biggest examples I always give, even though now we're almost a year out, but from the Summer Olympics, it was really on the front page of every Olympic story. Major Olympians, strong, successful athletes coming forward with their own struggles and what they do to support themselves through their Olympic journey. What's going on locally and across New York? So far in 2025, we've heard from Governor Kathy Hochul major plans to reform New York's mental health system and our laws to better serve individuals suffering from a mental illness and their communities. For example, she wants to address involuntary outpatient and involuntary commitment laws and strengthen assisted outpatient treatment laws, the AOT law, which we'll talk about later. On a national level, example, we are seeing massive federal budget cuts that will significantly impact programs like Medicaid, SNAP benefits, which is, the food stamp program. Medicaid, many people may not know, that's the single largest payer for mental health services in the United States. The SNAP program provides essential food assistance to Americans. So these federal cuts are very problematic, very worrisome. They will certainly jeopardize access to health care, including mental health care for very vulnerable communities.
And it's unfortunate that we're seeing those funding cuts at this time when mental health needs are on the rise. So it is very concerning. One area that you mentioned, outpatient treatment, Kendra's law is an area that you specialize in. Can you tell us more about that particular law?
AOT, that stands for Assisted Outpatient Treatment, under the New York Mental Hygiene Law, is a program that was set up starting all the way leads back to 1999. It's named after Kendra Webdale. She was pushed into off the subway platform by a man who suffered from serious mental illness. Coming out of that tragedy is this set of laws that allows for a court to order outpatient treatment. In order to be eligible for this type of court-ordered treatment, you have to meet certain criteria. So I help families navigate whether or not their loved one meets that criteria and how to apply for this service. And it's run county by county in New York, so depending on where you live, that's where you apply. Some of the criteria, the real major criteria, first you have to be an adult. You have to be 18 years of age or older to qualify. You have to suffer from a serious mental illness. You have to have had at least 2 prior hospitalizations in the past 36 months due to noncompliance with treatment, meaning you entered a psychiatric facility for treatment, and the reason for having to be admitted to that hospital was that you were noncompliant with treatment prior to the hospitalization. Really, the goal of this program of AOT is to prevent a relapse or deterioration in the individual's mental health condition. It's to stop what we call the revolving door. Mm-hmm. Someone who goes into a hospital, stabilizes, comes out of the hospital, stops taking their medication, and decompensates, goes back into the hospital, and the process starts all over again. The goal is to keep someone in the least restrictive environment, keep them at home, let them go to their outpatient providers and get the care they need on an outpatient basis, rather than in the involuntary, structured, supervised, locked unit in a hospital. And so part of this program is, let's say, once you meet criteria, once you're accepted into the program, once you go through the court process and a judge actually orders you to participate in the treatment, what is the treatment? What are the services that this person now can avail themselves of? The biggest part of AOT is case management. And so they're assigned either what's called an ACT team, an assertive community treatment team, or some type of case manager, care coordinator, someone who's really the boots on the ground in the community, going out and meeting with them, making sure that they're taking their medication, seeing their provider. And it's really that hands-on service in the community, that supervision, that might just be enough to keep the person compliant with their treatment. And then there's an actual treatment plan that the doctor comes up with in terms of what medications, at what dosages does this person need to take certain medications, whether oral or by injection. It can also include other services, supportive housing, financial assistance in terms of managing finances, toxicology if there's some type of co-occurring substance use or alcohol use disorder. Usually the meetings with a case manager are multiple times per month, 4 to 6 times per month, meeting with a psychiatrist at least once per month to monitor the medication. And then one of the biggest questions I always get is, what are the consequences if you don't follow this court order? It sounds great on paper. You have a judge telling you have to do something, but what happens if the person doesn't follow the order? The consequence is if and when the person decompensates, their treatment team can issue a removal order, get them back to a hospital for an evaluation and possibly for an admission in a hospital setting.
So it sounds like they get this wraparound service just to make sure that they're staying in compliance with their treatment plan. And if something happens where they're not adhering to their treatment plan, there are these protocols and procedures in place to ensure that they're sticking to their plan, it sounds like. Yeah.
Correct. So there's no involuntary administration of medication in the community. The teeth of the program is that you can be removed, taken back to a hospital for an evaluation. If you meet certain criteria, you can be admitted back into the hospital.
How effective is Kendra's law helping them improve their mental health?
Listen, like I said, this program goes back to 1999. Overall, studies are done periodically every couple of years to monitor the success of the program. And in general, it is very successful, helping individuals maintain compliance, reducing homelessness, reducing, jail time, reducing recidivism of any criminal activity. There are so many benefits to this program. That's not to say it is a success for every single person who avails themselves of the program, but in general, it is successful.
And we've heard a lot about Kendra's Law in the news. Another thing we often hear about in the news is guardianship, especially with people like Britney Spears and Wendy Williams being involved in guardianships. But can you tell us more about guardianships? And also, can you help our listeners distinguish between what we hear in the news versus what's the reality when it comes to guardianships?
Really, in general, I would say, not just specific to guardianship, but there's a lot of misinformation out there as it relates to mental health, mental illness, the stigma that comes with the idea of somebody being mentally ill. There is still a negative stigma associated with mental illness. Often, individuals and their family members will avoid or delay seeking treatment due to the stigma. In many cultures, seeking professional help for mental illness may be counter to their values. Some families have had a bad experience with a provider or an institution and will disconnect from the system. People experience discrimination at work because of a mental health issue. But like you said, portrayal of mental illness and guardianship proceedings in the media, we don't always get good representation. It can be very misleading, preventing people from pursuing treatment or from pursuing guardianship for a loved one because of what we see in the media. My experience, having practiced in the guardianship part of many counties throughout New York for over a decade, has always been positive with the members of the bench and the bar and my clients. So what I can say for people who don't know what guardianship is, essentially, it's a legal proceeding where a court is being asked to appoint someone as a guardian for an individual who is alleged to be incapacitated. So there's allegations that someone, due to what is called functional limitations, cannot manage their own personal affairs or financial affairs. The family member, the concerned individual, is coming forward and asking the court to appoint a guardian to basically step in that person's shoes, make decisions for them, and manage their affairs. Like I said, the standard in New York is functional limitations. It's not a requirement to have medical testimony and a doctor certify incapacity. It's really, can this person function? Can they take care of their activities of daily living, manage their finances, pay their bills, things like that? And a big part of that is whether or not they have the insight and understanding into the consequence of not being able to manage those affairs. Guardianship is interesting when we're talking about someone who has serious mental illness, mental health condition. Question I get from a lot of potential clients and members of the community is, what can a guardian or what a guardian cannot do to help someone with a serious mental illness? It's a really important question. When I have someone ask me, or tell me I need to become my loved one's guardian so I can make them take their medication, I always caution them and say, well, actually, it's very clear in the law in New York that no guardian can consent to the involuntary administration of medication over the person's objection. The guardian also can't consent to the admission of an individual to a hospital. So there are limitations when it comes to guardianship for an individual with serious mental illness.
So can you just tell us maybe some typical cases where it was a positive experience?
One of the biggest benefits I've seen when you're dealing with someone with serious mental illness is access to protected health information, which otherwise a doctor, hospital, medical or mental health provider would not be able to share because of the HIPAA laws and because as an adult, the individual has a right to their protected health information to be confidential. It's really hard for a family to advocate for their loved one who has a serious mental illness when there is no flow of information both ways. So even with the HIPAA laws, families can provide information to the mental health professional, the psychiatrist, whoever it might be, to give them the history and the background. This is what led to a hospitalization, et cetera. This is their diagnosis. These are their symptoms. But when the doctor can't in return respond and say, this is we've been observing on the unit, for example, this is the medication we've prescribed for him or her, this is our discharge plan, when there's not an open and honest flow of information both ways, it's very difficult. Families are often left in the dark. One of the powers that I always ask for in my guardianship applications before a court with someone with serious mental illness is that the guardian has the ability to override that consent and say, now the doctors can talk to me. Now the doctors can share information with me. I have access to the medical records. And that's one of the biggest benefits. What I also see is applying for government assistance. Often the individual who may deny that they suffer from a serious mental illness is unemployed, has no income, no assets, and refuses to apply for assistance that they're eligible for. And so a guardian can apply for government assistance, can apply for Social Security, like we were talking about earlier, SNAP benefits, food stamps, health insurance, Medicaid, other benefits that they're entitled to, whether due to their income, their employment history, or their diagnosis of a disability. One of the other areas I'll touch upon that I really find effective in guardianship is if the individual, due to their mental illness, has jeopardized their housing, whether it's due to hoarding, disruptive behavior, non-payment of rent. I see a lot of threats of eviction or actual actions by a landlord for eviction. A guardianship can be very useful. The guardianship court has the ability to stay an eviction proceeding until the guardianship matter is resolved and a guardian is appointed, and then somebody can step into that person's shoes and protect their interests in their housing and really be able to advocate for that person if it's appropriate for them to stay in that housing and it's economically feasible for them to afford the housing that they're living in. The guardian can go into housing court, hire counsel, and do what needs to be done, maybe pay arrears, maybe clean up the apartment, do a heavy-duty cleaning. Whatever needs to be done, the guardian can assist that person and protect their housing. So that's just a few of the many areas that a guardian can be useful for an individual who's alleged to be incapacitated due to a mental illness.
Thank you. And thank you for shedding light on some of the benefits that a family could have with having their loved one in a guardianship. You talked about the benefits for the guardianship and just the benefits of having a mental health lawyer. So when is the best time to call a mental health lawyer?
I love this question because I always say there is no wrong time to call for help. And as I said earlier, many people wait and wait and wait to call for help. And so often I get the call Friday at 5 o'clock or on the eve of a holiday weekend or in the midst of a crisis. And we jump right in. I tell people when life seems normal and calm and your loved one is compliant with treatment, you can plan ahead. You can plan for a potential relapse in their condition. But more often than not, I get the call when the crisis is well underway. That's okay too. I mean, generally, call for help when you start to see red flags. When you start to see that the person maybe stopped taking their medication or the symptoms are starting to surface again, so you have suspicions that the individual stopped taking their medication. Maybe they are not rising to the level of needing an involuntary hospitalization yet. They don't meet the criteria, which would be substantial risk of harm to self or others. But get someone on your team who can really help you identify the issues and advocate with you before you're in the midst of a crisis. That way you can make thoughtful decisions about how to best intervene to protect your loved one.
So overall, it sounds like the earlier the better, but worst case scenario, it is when they're in the midst of crisis. That's still a good time to call for a mental health lawyer.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because you're used to working in those situations. So yeah.
Yes. Yeah. A lot of what we do is crisis management.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. If people want to get your information or if they are in need of resources, where can they go to get that information?
My direct dial to our mental health law practice is 646-539-3705. My email is my initials, jr@msf-law.com. And our website is meisterselig.com. Many resources on our website, from articles that I've written and programs that I've presented to members of the bar, to members of the community. I recently have started doing a lot of work with NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and they have resources out there to help all different people, caregivers and peers, through all different issues that arise due to mental illness. Long Island is also home to several legal aid organizations that provide free or significantly reduced fee legal services to individuals who meet certain income and asset criteria. And so I'm happy to share links to all of those agencies in your show notes.
Perfect. So when we have this on our website, we'll definitely include those links so that people could have access to those resources into your law firm as well. So thank you so much for joining us on the Health Line. And thank you for providing us with so much information about mental health law and the importance of mental health law, but also the significance of Mental Health Awareness Month. While things are improving in terms of stigma is being reduced, we still have the stigma out there. So I'm happy that we're discussing this and also that there are resources out there to help people. So thank you for that. So this wraps up another episode of the Health Line, Issues That Shape Our Wellbeing. I'd like to thank our studio engineer, John Mullen. I would also like to thank WRHU Radio Hofstra for their help with the production of this podcast. Lastly, I would like to thank Hofstra School of Health Sciences for sponsoring this podcast. I am Dr. Andrea Ault-Brutus, and thank you for listening.